but today is to the day, the 10th year anniversary of the moment that made me a libertarian, the moment that first introduced me to Ron Paul, and then kind of sparked the interest that ultimately became made me a libertarian, and kind of sparked the interest in me going down this rabbit hole that is this podcast. You know, it was all kind of sparked by that. I wouldn't have considered myself particularly political or interested in these ideas before, so I wanted to play that clip. I know we've played it on the show before, but here was 10 years ago. I happened to be watching what I think when I've talked about this, sometimes I've said it was the first presidential debate of that season, but I looked it up today and it was the second, actually. I don't remember the first. But the second presidential debate, it's early in the year, and some guy I had never heard of before named Ron Paul was out on the Republican debate. And to me, Republicans were the pro-war party. It was that cut and dry until I saw this.
Was right. We don't understand the irrationality of Middle Eastern politics. So right now we're building an embassy in Iraq that's bigger than the Vatican. We're building 14 permanent bases. What would we say here if China was doing this in our country or in the Gulf of Mexico?
You know, I'm going to have to break this video down a bit because I know we've played this before, but every time I'll play it, some new thing will spark out of me. By the way, just laying out for everyone, he was making, when he said Ronald Reagan was right, he was talking about how Ronald Reagan in his memoirs, was writing about his intervention in Lebanon, and that he was like, I'll never turn tail and leave, and then they kidnapped these Marines, and he did turn tail and leave, and he was basically like, you know what, I realized we don't understand the irrationality of Middle Eastern politics. There's some crazy shit going on over there, and we can't be a part of it. And he's like, I think Reagan was right in his memoir when he reflected on that. And then, you know, he makes the point, which is, of course, just very interesting. And to this day, to remember that, you know, this would always, Ron Paul was always so good at keeping the big picture things in focus, because, you know, Obama would be like, oh, we're pulling some people out of Iraq, and then we're putting some people back into Iraq. And then Trump's like, oh, we're not going to fight the war in Iraq. Well, I've approved targeted things in Iraq. But Ron Paul's the one who points out, we built these permanent bases. We built a base bigger than the Vatican. We're not leaving Iraq. You don't build something like that to leave. What do you think? You build the Vatican and then take off? Of course not. So, of course, we're still there.
It's also the lunacy of you think these people like other countries living in their territory.
And, of course, and then that's the next main point that he hits, that how would we feel? And this is, to me, what was so brilliant that no one else is talking about. And still to this day, 10 years fucking later, we're still in these same wars. And the thing that's still being overlooked is, what would we say if anyone else was doing this to our country? Right. Is there any way they'd be the good guy?
Well, that's the second it's pointed out, that's when it starts feeling like imperialism.
I will tell you,
to...
it's a very weird thing that people who support, you know, I make the comparison between religion and statism a lot on this show. And ultimately that religion is, statism is just the most, you know, as Larkin Rose would say, the most dangerous religion. But the point is, like, you know, you say, most religious people, right, they are essentially atheists to every other religion. Like, they kind of get it. They're right there with an atheist. They feel that way. Like, if you ask a Jew about a Christian, they basically feel the same way. I guess a little bit different because they do think, you know, like, everything preceding their religion was real. But if you ask a Jewish person about Hinduism, they're an atheist just like an atheist is to Judaism. You basically believe all these other religions are bullshit, but yours is the right one. And that reminds me a lot of how people feel about our military. It's like you believe every other military ever was evil, but ours is this noble one for some reason, you know? Anyway, so just pay attention, because this is... all these little things stuck with me, and this is what locked me into the moment. So first you have Ron Paul making an excellent point. Then the moderator is going to give him some pushback. He will then respond, okay? Just pay attention with me here to what the moderator says compared to what Ron Paul says. See if the moderator puts some words into Ron Paul's mouth.
You get him, Ron Paul.
But just focus on this. Does the moderator put some words into Ron Paul's mouth here that he didn't say? Now go ahead.
We would be objecting. We need to look at what we do from the perspective of what would happen if somebody else did it to us.
Are you suggesting we invited the 9/11 attack, sir?
I'm suggesting that we listen to the people who attacked us and the reason they did it. And they are delighted that we're over there because Osama bin Laden has said, I am glad you're over on our sand because we can target you so much easier. They've already now, since that time, have killed 3,400 of our men, and I don't think it was necessary.
Wendell, may I make a comment on that? That's really an extraordinary statement. That's an extraordinary statement. As someone who lived through the attack of September 11, that we invited the attack because we were attacking Iraq.
So pause it here. So Giuliani then responds to what the moderator put in Ron Paul's mouth.
Right.
He goes, what an extraordinary statement that we invited the attack. You mean the statement that the moderator just asked? By the way, moderators aren't really supposed to put statements into candidates' mouths, right? Isn't the idea of a moderator to be a neutral party who's like just illuminates what you're saying? Now, so he leads him down this path. Ron Paul, he goes, are you suggesting we invited the attacks? Ron Paul goes, I'd suggest we look at why bin Laden wants us over there.